My older sister drained the family company, and my parents still demanded I give her half of mine. After years of laughing at my cute little workshop, I just smiled and said I don't hire thieves. Hey, so here's what nobody tells you about growing up as the disappointment in a wealthy family. You get very comfortable being invisible. Not poor invisible, rich invisible. You show up to holidays, you dress the part, you smile when you're supposed to, and you learn early on that no matter how well you do, your parents will never look at you the way they look at the golden child. My name is Alara Callahan. I'm 29 years old. For the past 6 years, I've been building custom furniture out of a small workshop in Red Bank, New Jersey. Real furniture, not assembly line junk. Tables that take months to finish. Chairs where every joint has to be perfect, every surface flawless. The kind of work that demands patience, precision, and skill, things my family never valued because they couldn't be measured in quarterly returns. Last month, I delivered a conference table to a hedge fund in Greenwich. The invoice was $28,000. The client paid without blinking. His wife cried when she saw it. Actual tears. Meanwhile, my parents still thought I was playing with wood. They hated what I did. Every Thanksgiving for 5 years, my father asked when I'd get serious. Every birthday, my mother sent me job listings, property management firms, analyst roles, anything that looked respectable. They ran a commercial real estate company in Bergen County, 30 years old, family-owned. My older sister Blair was vice president of acquisitions. My younger brother Declan handled investor relations and public optics. Blair was the golden child, always had been. There was a framed photo of her shaking hands with the governor in the living room. My photo was in the hallway bathroom. I was the daughter who worked with her hands. The embarrassment, the one they tolerated. 5 days before Christmas, I drove up to the family estate in Saddle River. Big colonial house, circular driveway, perfectly staged. I came early this year. I thought stupidly that maybe if I helped set up, if I showed effort, maybe they'd finally see me as more than a problem they couldn't fix. Still believing family mattered after everything. The housekeeper who'd been there 18 years opened the door. She smiled like she always did. "Ilara, it's good to see you." She was the only one who ever seemed genuinely happy I'd arrived. Inside, my mother and Declan were already buried in spreadsheets spread across the coffee table like they were coordinating a hostile takeover. "I'm here," I said. My mother barely looked up. "Leave your coat in the hall. Don't touch the decorations. The staging company is coming back tomorrow." Declan glanced at me and smirked. "Oh, good. You came early." Remember when she used to help set up always moved the furniture wrong, scratched Mom's antique credenza. I didn't respond. I'd learned that silence was safer. I headed upstairs to use the bathroom. That's when things got strange. My old bedroom, the one I'd lived in since I was 7, had someone else's luggage by the door. Inside, every personal item I'd ever left there was gone. Photos, books, old tools, everything shoved into plastic bins in the corner like trash waiting to be taken out. "Mom," I called. No answer. I walked toward my father's office. The door was half open. And then I heard my name. "Slides after dessert," my father said calmly. "Keep it short. No arguing." Blair's voice followed. "Put the salary chart on the screen right after the intro. She won't say no in front of everyone." My stomach dropped. Then my mother. "Once she agrees, we fold her shop into ours. Control the client list." I backed away, heart pounding. At the end of the hall, the printer room light was on. Inside the tray sat a stack of freshly printed handouts. Callahan Career Trajectory. My name was in bullet points. There was even a slide titled Objection Handling. They thought I made $45,000 a year. I took photos, every page. Then I walked out of the house without saying a word. By the time the security gate closed behind me, I was done trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant for me. And by the time I reached the Garden State Parkway, I'd made 3 decisions. First, I was going to that dinner. Second, I was going to let them spring their trap. Third, I was going to destroy it in front of everyone. They wanted a show. I'd give them one. I didn't cry on the drive back to Red Bank. That surprised me. I had always assumed that if I ever truly broke with my family, there would be tears. Rage. Some kind of dramatic collapse at the side of the road. But there was none of that. Just a steady, almost unsettling calm, like something inside me had finally clicked into place after years of grinding the wrong way. They hadn't misunderstood me. They hadn't underestimated me by accident. They had assessed me, dismissed me, and decided I was a resource to be exploited. Once you accept that the pain changes shape. By the time I pulled into a rest stop on the Garden State Parkway, the shock had worn off completely. What replaced it was focus. I sat in my truck with the engine idling heater, humming phone in my hand, scrolling through the photos I'd taken. Slide titles, Salary charts? My name reduced to a problem that needed managing. There was something almost impressive about how thorough they'd been. Tasks assigned, talking points scripted, emotional responses anticipated and neutralized. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as leverage. That was the moment I stopped wanting their approval. Not consciously, not in some dramatic internal monologue, it just evaporated. Like a bad smell you don't notice is gone until you breathe deeply and realize the air is clean. I made the call I should have made years ago. "Hey," Connor said, picking up on the first ring. "What's wrong?" Connor had been my anchor since college. He'd helped me haul equipment into my first rented workspace. He'd been there when a router burned out at 2 in the morning and I thought I'd lose a deadline and a client. He knew exactly how much work went into every piece I made because he'd watched it day after day. "I just found my family's Christmas present to me," I said. A full-blown intervention. PowerPoint, printed handouts, salary charts, the whole thing. Silence on the other end. "You're joking." "I have photos." Another pause. Longer this time. "Where are you?" "Parkway rest stop, heading back to Red Bank." "What are you going to do?" I looked out through the windshield at the steady stream of headlights passing by, each one carrying someone with their own destination, their own mess. For the first time, mine felt clear. "I'm going to let them do it," I said. "I'm going to sit there quietly, let them present their little fantasy, and then I'm going to dismantle it in front of everyone they care about." Connor exhaled slowly. "All right. If you're doing this, you're doing it prepared. Come to my place." He lived in Asbury Park in a converted warehouse loft he'd renovated himself. When I got there, he already had coffee brewing, and his laptop open on the kitchen island, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "Talk," he said, sliding a mug toward me. So I did. I told him about my room being erased, about overhearing the plan, about the numbers they'd made up, the way my parents and siblings had spoken about me like I wasn't even real, just a problem to be solved. "They think you make 45 grand, Connor finally said, incredulous. "Apparently. That's insulting on a cosmic level." "It's worse than that," I said. "They plan to fold my business into theirs, control my client list, use my reputation to cover whatever mess they've made." Connor's jaw tightened. "Then we give them reality. Every receipt, every dollar, every client who's trusted you." That night, my workshop turned into a war room. We pulled tax returns showing my real income just over $140,000 last year. Bank statements with steady deposits, signed contracts, client testimonials I'd saved over the years because part of me had always needed proof that someone somewhere saw value in what I did. We organized photos of finished pieces in clients' homes' notes, thanking me for my work follow-up commissions. This wasn't bragging. This was documentation. At one point, Connor leaned back from his laptop and frowned. "You know their company filings are public, right?" He pulled them up. Accounts receivable was a mess. Missed payments, delayed deals, declining investor confidence stretching back nearly 2 years. "Your sister didn't just screw up," he said quietly. "She's been bleeding them dry." I felt a strange, hollow twist in my chest. Not sympathy, not even surprise, just confirmation. So that was why they needed me. We rehearsed too. Where I'd stand, when I'd speak. How to let them finish digging the hole before I handed them the shovel. "Don't get emotional," Connor warned. "Calm is what scares people like that." "I've had years of practice," I said. When we finished, the packet sat on the table between us. Thick, heavy, real. That was when I made the second call. "Hello," my grandmother answered, her voice warm but cautious. "Hi, Grandma. It's Alara." A pause. "This is a surprise. Is everything all right?" "No," I said, "but I need you to hear me out." I told her everything. Not dramatized, not softened. Just facts. The presentation, the fake salary, the plan to pressure me into handing over my business. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Your father called me yesterday," she said finally. "Asked for a substantial loan." My grip tightened on the phone. When I pressed him on why she continued, he got evasive. "Now I understand." "Then Sharper Blair's been stealing, hasn't she?" My stomach dropped. "How did you—" "I've suspected for months," she said. "The numbers never added up when Vincent talked about the business." She didn't hesitate after that. "I'll be at the dinner," she said, "and Alara don't answer any calls from them before then. Let them think everything is normal." When we hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, the weight of it all finally settling. I had proof. I had an ally, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking into a family gathering hoping to be accepted. I was walking in ready to end the illusion. Christmas Eve arrived quietly the way moments before disasters always do. I spent the morning in my workshop finishing a commission I'd promised myself I wouldn't rush no matter what chaos waited for me later. walnut tabletop, hand-cut joinery. The kind of work that required focus so complete it pushed everything else out of your head. For a few hours there was nothing but grain patterns, clean lines, and the steady rhythm of my hands doing what they'd been trained to do. My phone buzzed nonstop on the workbench beside me. Mom, Dad, Declan. I didn't answer a single one. Let them wonder. Let me have this small advantage silence. By late afternoon, the piece was finished. I stepped back, ran my hand over the surface, and felt that familiar, quiet satisfaction. Whatever happened tonight, this was real. This existed because I had built it, not because anyone had handed it to me or decided I deserved it. I cleaned up, locked the shop, and changed into a simple black dress and boots. No power suit, no costume. I wasn't going in to impress them, I was going in to end something. The drive back to Saddle River felt longer than usual. Traffic thickened as I got closer, red taillights snaking toward the estate, like a warning I was choosing to ignore. When I turned into the circular driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it always had, perfectly lit, perfectly staged, perfectly hollow. Inside, the air buzzed with forced cheer. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends, everyone dressed up, glasses already clinking, laughter just a beat too loud. The annual Callahan Christmas dinner in full performance mode. Mom spotted me almost immediately. Relief flooded her face, so obvious it was almost funny. "Alara, you came," she said, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a grip. "We were worried. You didn't answer your phone." "Got busy with work," I said lightly. "You know how it is." She nodded, satisfied, already moving on. She didn't know. None of them did. They thought tonight would end with me cornered, pressured, folded neatly back into the family machine. Dinner unfolded exactly as it always had. Expensive food, empty compliments. Dad holding court at the head of the table, telling stories that made him sound indispensable. Blair casually name-dropping investors, and deals soaking up attention like it was oxygen. Declan chiming in with commentary about optics and branding, always positioning himself as the reasonable one. And me sitting quietly waiting. I felt my grandmother's eyes on me from across the table. When I looked up, she gave me a small, steady nod. After dessert, Dad stood and tapped his glass. "If I could have everyone's attention," he said, smiling. "Before we move to the living room, I'd like to share something special. A presentation about our family's future." There it was. Everyone shuffled toward the living room, drawn by curiosity and obligation. The projector was already set up. Of course it was. I took a seat near the back, the packet Connor and I had assembled tucked neatly inside my coat. Dad began with the company's legacy. 30 years, family values, unity, responsibility. Then Blair stepped forward, clicker in hand. "As many of you know," she said smoothly, "Alara has been pursuing alternative career paths." A few polite chuckles. "We've put together some information to help her see the bigger picture." The first slide appeared. Callahan career trajectory. Charts. Averages. My name reduced to bullet points. And then the number bold and red. $45,000. As you can see, Blair continued, glancing at me with a patronizing smile, the ceiling for this kind of work is extremely limited. Meanwhile, our family firm offers stability, growth, potential, real opportunity. "That's an interesting number," I said, standing. The room went still. Blair blinked. "Excuse me. Where did you get it?" She hesitated just a fraction. "Industry averages, standard research." "Really?" I asked calmly. "Because according to my tax returns, I made $140,000 last year." The silence was instant and absolute. I pulled the packet from my coat and held it up. "Want to see?" You could hear ice settling in glasses. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. "I've got bank statements," I continued, stepping forward. "Client testimonials, photos of pieces I've sold for more than some people's cars. But please keep going. Tell everyone more about my failing hobby." Dad stepped toward me, his smile strained. "Alara, this isn't the time. You set up a presentation," I said evenly, "printed handouts. Even made a slide called objection handling." I held up my phone. "I have photos of everything. From the printer tray. Want me to project them?" Mom's face drained of color. Declan stared at the floor. "Here's what's actually happening," I said, turning to the room. "The company is in trouble. They're hemorrhaging money. And instead of being honest, they plan to humiliate me into joining, so they could absorb my business and bail themselves out." Gasps rippled through the room. "That's not true," Declan shouted. "Really?" I looked at him. "So there are no cash flow problems, no investor concerns." "Dad didn't call Grandma yesterday asking for a loan." No one answered. Then my grandmother stood. Every head turned. "It's worse than that," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. I've suspected for months that something was wrong. Vincent admitted there have been irregularities. She looked directly at Blair. 3 years of them. Blair's hand started to shake, the clicker rattling softly. Your golden child has been embezzling, my grandmother continued. And instead of dealing with it honestly, they decided to use Alara to cover it up. Steal her clients, her reputation, her work. The room erupted. People stood. Voices overlapped. Chairs scraped back. One aunt grabbed her coat. A cousin pulled out his phone. An uncle stared at Dad, disbelief written across his face. Vincent, he said quietly. Is this true? Dad didn't answer. That was enough. I didn't wait for the chaos to settle. I turned and walked toward the door. Alara, wait, Mom said, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. Don't, I said softly. We're done here. I stepped out into the cold December night, the sound of everything collapsing behind me. And for the first time, I didn't look back. I drove without a destination for almost an hour. The house disappeared in my rearview mirror, then the neighborhood, then the town itself, until all that was left was the dark ribbon of road ahead of me and the quiet hum of the engine. My phone vibrated constantly in the cup holder. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Mom, Dad, Declan, Blair. I let it buzz until the screen went dark again. By the time I pulled off the highway and into a small rest area, the adrenaline had faded, replaced by something heavier and steadier. Not guilt, not regret, relief. The kind that settles deep in your bones when you finally stop holding your breath after years of pretending everything is fine. I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing, replaying the look on their faces. Not the anger, not even the humiliation. It was the shock that stayed with me. The moment they realized I was no longer the child they could manage, no longer the problem they could rearrange to suit themselves. They had underestimated me for so long that they'd forgotten it was a choice, one I could stop agreeing to. I checked into a small cabin in the Poconos just after midnight. Nothing fancy. Wood-paneled walls, a stone fireplace, the kind of place meant for quiet and isolation. I needed both. I left my bag by the door, kicked off my boots, and sat on the edge of the bed, finally letting myself breathe. My phone lit up again. This time it was a text from my grandmother. Proud of you. They're still reeling. Half the guests left within 20 minutes. Your father tried to salvage the evening. No one stayed. Call me tomorrow. Another message followed unexpected. The housekeeper. I packed your belongings safely. They're in the garage when you're ready. They needed to hear what you said tonight. That one hit harder than anything else. I turned the phone face down and slept without dreaming. Christmas morning felt like waking up into a different life. Snow dusted the trees outside the cabin, soft and quiet, like the world was deliberately lowering its voice. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching it steam in my hands, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. When I finally checked my phone, it was chaos. Texts, voicemails, emails. Dad, your mother is devastated. This reflects poorly on your judgment. We need to discuss this as a family, Declan. You've always been selfish, but this is next level. You humiliated us. Blair, you think you won. This isn't over, not even close. That last one made me smile. Still posturing, still convinced she had leverage. I deleted it without replying. Another message came in from my grandmother. Half the family called me last night. Most are disgusted with your parents. Several cousins want to commission furniture from you. Your aunt said she always knew something was wrong. I stayed in the mountains through New Year's. Not hiding, resetting. I sketched designs I'd been putting off for years. Bigger pieces, more ambitious ones. A dining table meant to anchor a room, not just occupy it. A set of chairs designed as a collection, not individual commissions. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about what my parents would say or whether my success would somehow provoke them. They weren't a factor anymore. Connor came up for a day, bringing groceries and that familiar mix of humor and blunt honesty. You know demand's going to spike, he said, flipping through my sketches. People love a good family implosion story, especially when talent's involved. I know, I said. I've been thinking about hiring. He looked up. You ready for that? Terrified, I admitted, but ready. When I returned to Red Bank in early January, my workshop felt different, lighter. Like it had been waiting for me to stop apologizing for taking up space. There were 23 new inquiries in my inbox. A gallery in Tribeca wanted to talk representation. 2 interior designers asked for meetings. One email simply said, I heard what you did. I respect it. Let's work together. On January 8th, I met my grandmother for lunch. She was already seated when I arrived, sharp-eyed as always. She stood to hug me, holding on a second longer than usual. You look well, she said. So do you. We didn't waste time on small talk. I owe you an apology, she said, setting her menu down. For what? For not stepping in sooner. I saw how they treated you. I stayed quiet. I won't do that again. I nodded. It mattered more than she knew. I've updated my will, she continued. You'll receive 40% of my estate. Your siblings will split the rest. I started to protest. She cut me off with a look. This isn't charity. You've proven yourself, and I'm also investing in your business. 15% equity. Capital to expand. I stared at her. I've reviewed your numbers, she said calmly. You're a sound investment, and I expect quarterly reports. I laughed despite myself. As we stood to leave, she squeezed my hand. Remember this, she said. You don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they're family. You owe yourself respect. I carried that with me back to the workshop. And somewhere deep down, I knew the hardest part was still coming. Because Blair had never accepted losing gracefully. And she never would. The first sign that Blair wasn't done came 3 days after I returned to Red Bank. I was in the workshop early, the place still cold enough that my breath fogged faintly in the air. I had a walnut credenza halfway assembled on the main bench, 6 weeks of work, already invested, every joint, cut by hand, every measurement checked twice. I was sanding when I heard the door open behind me. I didn't turn around right away. I didn't need to. Her presence had always announced itself the same way, confident, entitled, as if every room already belonged to her. Nice setup, Blair said. Quaint. I straightened slowly and turned. She stood there in a tailored coat and heels that had no business touching sawdust, looking around like she was evaluating a hotel room she might or might not approve of. Same perfect hair, same controlled smile, same golden child certainty that rules bent when she applied pressure. Get out, I said. She laughed softly. Relax. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to talk business. She reached for one of my chisels, lifting it off the rack and turning it in her hand like she understood what it was. She didn't. She never had. Put that down, I said. She did, but not before dragging her fingers along the edge of the credenza. My chest tightened. That piece alone is worth more than your car, I said. Touch it again, and this conversation ends. Her jaw flickered just for a second. The first real crack. The auditors finished their preliminary report, she said, pacing now. Dad's panicking. Mom's barely holding it together. Declan's a mess. Sounds like a you problem. She stopped in front of me. Here's the thing, Alara, she said, lowering her voice. It doesn't have to be ugly. Family takes care of family. I stared at her, waiting. You bring me in as a partner, she continued. 50-50. We call it even. I handle operations. You keep doing your woodworking thing. I laughed. Not sharply, not cruelly, just a genuine, startled laugh. You're serious. Dead serious, she said. I have experience. You don't have connections. I can scale this. You stole from the family company for 3 years, I said calmly. And you want half of my business. Her smile vanished. I didn't steal, she snapped. There were cash flow issues, creative accounting. Things got complicated. The auditors disagree. They don't know the whole story, she said, stepping closer. I'm offering you a lifeline. Take it. I felt something settle in me then. Not anger. Certainty. I don't hire thieves, I said. And I definitely don't make them partners. Her face hardened. Think carefully, she said. You make me an enemy. Things get difficult. Investors, clients, I can make phone calls. Are you threatening me? I'm giving you options, she said, smiling again. 50-50, final offer. Get out of my workshop. She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You'll regret this. She left. 3 days later, it started. A client called to cancel a commission. Said he'd heard concerning things about my business practices. Another followed. Then another. A 1-star review appeared online from someone I'd never worked with, claiming I'd delivered damaged goods. Then another, more elaborate. Someone said I'd shown up to a delivery drunk. Another accused me of making inappropriate comments to a client's spouse. Every account had been created within 48 hours. Everyone had zero history. But they were there, and that was enough to scare people. I called Connor. She's going scorched earth, I said. Fake reviews, cancellations. Document everything he said immediately. Screenshots, timestamps, all of it. I was already doing it. Then the calls started. Blocked numbers, heavy breathing, silence, disconnect. 3 times a night, sometimes 4. A week later, I arrived at the workshop and found the lock scratched, twisted slightly out of alignment. Nothing taken. Tools moved. A message without words. I called the police. The officer listened carefully as I laid everything out: the confrontation, the threats, the reviews, the calls. You believe your sister is responsible? I know she is. Do you have proof? I showed him what I had. The the timing, the accounts, security footage from across the street showing a figure matching her build near my shop at 2 a.m. He leaned back, exhaled. You should consider a restraining order. I filed the next day. Temporary emergency. In court, the judge reviewed the evidence in silence. When she looked up, her expression was sharp. Miss Callahan, she said, given the pattern of harassment and intimidation, I'm granting the order. Your sister is to maintain a distance of 500 feet from you and your place of business. No contact of any kind. When Blair was served, she lost it. She called me from a burner phone, screaming about betrayal, about how I'd destroyed the family, about how I'd pay for this. I recorded every word. She violated the order within 24 hours. At the second hearing, the judge wasn't patient. I'm extending this restraining order to 2 years, she said. Any further violation will result in criminal penalties. Blair's lawyer wouldn't meet my eyes. Walking out of that courthouse, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. I had drawn a line, and this time I hadn't stepped back. The gallery opening happened on a Thursday night in early March, and by then, Blair's world was already collapsing. I'd stopped checking the family group chat weeks ago, stopped asking my grandmother for updates unless she offered them herself. The distance wasn't avoidance, it was maintenance. Every ounce of focus I had went into the work, into making sure the moment I'd been building toward for 6 years didn't buckle under the weight of everything else. The space at Forge and Grain was a converted warehouse with exposed brick and high ceilings, the kind of place that made furniture look like art instead of utility. Professional lighting washed each piece in warm clarity, highlighting joinery. Most people never noticed until it was pointed out. 6 years of being told I was wasting my life. All of it stood there solid and undeniable. I arrived early with my 2 employees, checking spacing, adjusting sightlines, making sure nothing felt crowded. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory guiding me. Nerves buzzed under the surface, but they were sharp, focused nerves, the kind that came before something earned. You ready? One of them asked. As I'll ever be. Guests started arriving just after 7. Collectors, designers, gallery owners from Manhattan, bloggers with cameras slung over their shoulders. People who spoke fluently about materials and process, who asked questions that showed they understood the difference between mass production and craft. I found my rhythm quickly, talking about why I chose certain woods, why I refused shortcuts, why every joint mattered even if no one ever saw it. A collector from San Francisco bought 3 pieces on the spot, paid asking price without negotiation. I've been looking for someone who still does real joinery, he said. Everyone else just glues parts together and calls it bespoke. We shook hands. One sale covered 3 months of operating costs. At 7:30, my grandmother walked in, alone. She caught my eye and smiled, the quiet, proud kind that didn't need an audience. I walked over. Where's everyone else? I asked. Your parents decided not to attend, she said calmly. Too embarrassed after Blair's court appearance. I hadn't known about that. And Blair? I asked. She smiled faintly. Prohibited from being within 500 feet of you. Security turned her away when she tried to enter. I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was still tight. The show looks extraordinary, she said. I'm very proud of you. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't have missed it. The night ran long. By closing, I had orders totaling just over $67,000. 3 interior designers wanted exclusive arrangements. 2 private clients wanted full home offices designed from the ground up. My phone buzzed constantly with follow-ups, introductions, congratulations. As the last guest filtered out, Connor clapped a hand on my shoulder. You did it, he said, and you didn't even have to burn anything down. I came close, I admitted. Outside early spring, air cut clean and cold. I stood there for a moment, looking back through the glass at the pieces glowing under gallery lights, and let myself feel it. I had built this. April bled into May. Blair's situation went public. Criminal charges were filed not just for violating the restraining order, but for embezzlement. 3 years of falsified records, shell companies diverted funds, court filings that became public record almost immediately. A cousin sent me the article. Bergen County real estate executive charged with embezzlement. Her mugshot stared back at me from my phone, the same face that had once been framed next to the governor's handshake photo, stripped of polish, exposed. The family firm unraveled fast. Investors pulled out. Civil lawsuits piled up. The image my parents had spent decades curating collapsed in a matter of weeks. I watched from a distance, not with glee, with detachment. Summer brought more work than I could handle. We hired 4 more people, started turning down projects. A brownstone job in Brooklyn led to referrals, which led to a magazine feature, which led to more referrals. Success stacked on success, each one built on skill instead of manipulation. In late June, my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. Ilara, she said. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Can we talk? About what? Everything she said. Christmas, the way we treated you, the mistakes we made. I stayed silent. I'm calling to ask for help, she continued. The company, the lawsuits, Blair's legal fees. There it was. We were desperate, she said quickly. We didn't know what else to do. So now my business is valuable enough to save you, I said, after years of calling it a hobby. She paused. I could hear her trying not to cry. We're still family, she said. That has to count for something. You planned to humiliate me and steal my work in front of everyone, I said evenly. That wasn't desperation. That was strategy. She inhaled sharply. We've discussed it, she said. Once Blair's legal issues resolve, you bring her in as a partner. 50-50. She needs something to come back to. I laughed softly. I have a 2-year restraining order against her, I said. Even if I wanted to, it would be illegal. We could get it modified. No, I said. I don't hire thieves, and I don't make them partners. The line went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was hollow. I don't know what else to say. There's nothing left to say, I replied. You made your choices. I hung up. 2 hours later, Declan texted, You're tearing this family apart. I screenshot it, added it to the folder with the rest, then went back to work on a commission for a restaurant in the Hamptons. $22,000, cash on delivery. Yeah, I was fine. I thought that would be the end of it. After the restraining order, after the charges went public, after the gallery show, the commissions, the quiet satisfaction of watching my life expand while theirs collapsed. But families like mine don't let go easily. 2 weeks after I hung up on my mother, my phone rang again. Dad. I stared at his name for a long moment before answering. Not because I was afraid, because I was curious. Curious what was left once pride, leverage, and illusion were stripped away. Ilara, he said. His voice was different, thin, tired. Thank you for picking up. You wanted to talk. Yes, he said. Could we meet, just you and me? I considered it, then agreed. We chose a quiet diner in Montclair. Neutral ground. No polished image to maintain. No family audience. Just 2 people sitting across from each other with nothing left to hide. He arrived 10 minutes late. The man who'd once lectured me endlessly about punctuality looked like he'd aged a decade. His suit was wrinkled, his tie crooked, dark circles carved deep beneath his eyes. He slid into the booth heavily, as if the weight of everything he'd lost had finally become physical. Thank you for coming, he said. I nodded. What did you want to say? He ordered coffee, hands shaking slightly as he set the menu down. Then he exhaled long and slow. Blair took a plea deal last week, he said. 18 months, minimum security. I didn't react. The firm filed for bankruptcy, he continued. We're liquidating assets, selling the estate. That landed, but not the way he expected. It felt distant, like hearing about someone else's life. I built that company for 30 years, he said quietly. Sacrificed everything for it. Sacrificed us. He finally looked at me, and it's gone. I waited. You were right, he said, about all of it. I was wrong to mock what you built. Wrong to try to control you. Wrong to plan that Christmas ambush. Wrong to protect Blair when she came after you. He swallowed. I was wrong about everything. The waitress set his coffee down. He didn't touch it. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I need you to know, he said. You were right to walk away. You built something real, something sustainable, something that matters. He met my eyes. I'm proud of you, Ilara. I should have said that years ago. I felt nothing. No anger, no relief, no vindication. Just distance. Good to know, I said. Doesn't change anything. He nodded. I figured you'd say that. He stood to leave, then paused. You know what the worst part is? He asked. What? I had 2 children. One had the courage to build something honest. The other destroyed everything trying to please me. I chose the wrong one. His voice broke just slightly. I lost everything because of it. He walked out without waiting for a response. I sat there for a while after he left, listening to the low hum of the diner. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. No legacies, no golden children, no family myths worth burning everything down for. When I finally stood, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because he apologized, but because I didn't need it. That night, I went back to the workshop and stayed late finishing a piece commissioned by a restaurant in the Hamptons. $22,000, cash on delivery. The wood responded to my hands the way it always had, honest, unpretentious, real. This was my life now. Built without their approval, sustained without their help, protected without their permission. I locked up just after midnight, stepped into the quiet street, and smiled. I hadn't torn the family apart. They'd done that themselves. I just refused to be buried in the wreckage.